Welcome to the slightly later than usual driver ratings for the Belgian Grand Prix. We've had a bit of a surprise movement in the driver market, haven't we? But it's time. Let's get straight to it. And we're going to start with the man that crossed the line first, George Russell, not race winner in the end, was he? Got disqualified for the car being underweight, and purely, I think, was down to losing the tyre tread, which is, shocked me, to be honest with you. Both cars, Mercedes saying with Hamilton and George Russell weighing exactly the same at the start, so the loss in weight of the 1.5 kilos that George was underweight was the fact that he switched mid-race to a one-stop strategy, and fantastically pulled it off, didn't he? His race was, like Lewis Hamilton said, he wasn't in the race for a win at all, wasn't in Hamilton's radar, didn't expect to be one stopped by his teammate, and the reality is, I think George Russell, having got into the lead, watched everyone pitted, pitted early out, everybody, didn't he? Lap 11 with Max Verstappen, got the undercut on Oscar Piastri, and then Piastri passed him straight back, and he thought it's going to be a tough old afternoon for George. And then when he went long, it just looked like a matter of time. Toto Wolff at the end saying, he was on to finish 5th at best, and with a one stop he would have fell down to 5th, and so they threw a Hail Mary and agreed with George to try it. It worked, spectacularly so. Crossed the line first, like I said, in what was probably one of his best wins, to pull that tyre off and hold back his teammate for at least 2 or 3 laps on tyres which were 16 laps older, and where everybody was blindsided a little bit by this one stop because the undercut was strong. Nobody with the new track surface saying that we're looking at 2, possibly 3 stops even for the way around this circuit. The one stop was not in the question at all, and George just by feel went for it. McLaren didn't try it, even with Carlos Sainz coming on the radio to say, should we one stop, and they're looking at the tyres and thinking we're not going to make it. But George, he pulled off a race and a half. Sadly disqualified for being under the weight, the lightest man on the grid, sadly for him, and disqualified from a really what was a brilliant win. I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10 because, what else can you do? It was a brilliant racing. Shame about the result for him in the end. And the winner, Lewis Hamilton, who crossed the line in 2nd place, given that win in the end. I think he was fantastic as well throughout. A really good start, and what shocked me was when he out-dragged the Red Bull down to Eau Rouge and down the Kemmel Straight, and if that didn't give away the troubles early doors to what Red Bull would have down that straight, and especially for Sergio Perez, it was such a clear sign of one, that Mercedes being quick, and it was so surprising. Mercedes straight line speed through most of this season, last season, wasn't good at all, whether they were too heavy on downforce and normally slow down the straights. I mean, their straight line speed, even down Kemmel Straight this weekend, wasn't anywhere up there to be spectacular or one of the fastest either. So, pulled off a brilliant move. Lap 3, closed up with Charles Leclerc and took the lead crucially, and the only downside for him, I think, was be disappointed to see, was he just expecting George to drop off or definitely pit? The way he charged at the end, where he really pushed on them tyres where it was a second a lap faster, did he leave that too late? Just really realise that actually I'm racing George, it's not a given that I'll pass him, because he's seen him come on the radio and said what's the difference here, and it was looking tight, and it looked like that was more looking back to Oscar Piastri, who was charging him down rather than him looking ahead to battle for George Russell. To be honest, it looked like he was saving tyres for a fight to hold off rather than trying to use them up to catch George, and caught him out a little bit. And then he did make a couple of mistakes. I think that was the weakest part of his race, when he got right up behind George, running down wide into turn 1, lost momentum down to Eau Rouge, to really what was the one key place to overtake in Spa. Around sector 2, it was all over the back of George where you needed them tyres. but a really good race. Got the passes and looked comfortable for the win, which was so surprising. They were nowhere on Friday, and to come back a 1-2 finish as they crossed the line. Lewis Hamilton was brilliant, perfect moves when it needed it to. A 10 out of 10, and he's been on a massive charge since Silverstone, a massive revival from him, and he can go in happy for his race weekend. Second place man Oscar Piastri, who was third as he crossed the line. Another one, a really good weekend from him. Fifth place, he started, made up the pace on Lando Norris, who ran wide at turn 1, gave him the gap. He got a crucial pass on George Russell, but when he passed him straight back, which helped in his race for keeping ahead of his teammate and Max Verstappen, who were closing in behind him. And then he had a really good race from there, to be honest with you. Yeah, nice pass on Charles Leclerc, and then he was on a charge on the Mercedes, wasn't he? Looked like he'd be the one to take the race win. Like I said, Lewis Hamilton looking at the back thinking Oscar's the man to defend from. That McLaren was really fast, but like everybody was finding, as soon as you got up to the back of anybody, unless it was Sergio Perez, you were struggling to get close enough to make the pass down the Kemmel straight, and I think he pulled off a really good race. He didn't go for the one stop. I don't think that was ever an option. Like, he was always looking at the other guys who were more looking at the undercut, because the undercut was strong. It worked. But he came home a really good second place finish from him in the end. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 because I thought that was a really good race from him. He was strong in qualifying but beaten by his teammate, and in the race, well, he's doing well with managing these tyres much better now, isn't he? One of his weak points, he seemed to have got on top of that. Summer break has kind of come at the wrong time. He was on a run of form and will be hoping to keep that momentum when the season returns. Third place finisher, but not on the podium, Charles Leclerc crossed the line fourth from first, which was, yeah, unheard of. A spectacular lap from him to take pole position, or second place in the end. He was 6/10 off Max Verstappen, but lined up on pole. And actually, he got the perfect getaway, didn't he? And when he probably looked in his mirrors down at the end of lap 1 to see Lewis Hamilton behind, he's probably thinking, I've got the right man behind me. They didn't look strong on Friday and on the long runs, and so it'll be a battle between him and Lewis. And the longer it went, second lap, Perez wasn't really hunting down Lewis Hamilton like you thought he would. Yeah, you thought he'd have it in the bag, but then passed by Lewis Hamilton and then kept in touching distance to Lewis, didn't he? It was about 2 seconds, 3 seconds maximum behind him. It really went downhill a little bit, wasn't it, in the second stint, where he seemed to drop off the back of Lewis. Had he kept on holding onto him and kept within DRS potentially, I think he would have held off Oscar Piastri for longer. Unfortunately for him, passed by Oscar, but in a race where Ferrari were nowhere, Charles Leclerc pulled off a brilliant lap to put himself and take that podium finish in what was a podium in the end. You can be really happy with that. I think he maximised the car. That car wasn't where it was. Tried to undercut Lewis Hamilton. That didn't work. Got a long stop there. And then from there on, it just wasn't fast enough. But that Ferrari wasn't in a position, I think, to take third place. So I think he can be really happy with that. Even fourth place, to be honest with you. They were the fourth fastest car, and to beat a McLaren and a Red Bull, I think overall from where Ferrari were, you can be very happy with that. I'm going for a 9 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. Next up, Max Verstappen, who got a fantastic pole lap. It was so good. It looked ominous. It was the Red Bull back on Saturday, wasn't it? 0.6 of a second clear of the field, and you thought, well, the upgrades that they bought last time out didn't work, but they've really come to life in Spa. They were really set up for that middle sector, and you thought they're looking after the tyres and they've gone the right way. They are fast, and he'll be hunting everybody down in the race. And well, by lap 2, he was up into 8th place, one position behind Lando Norris, and was closing on Charles Leclerc, the pair of them, but just, yeah, it was interesting battle. He does the right move, undercut Lando Norris, and then from there on, it was a surprise that he just wasn't getting away from Norris or fighting Oscar or looking ahead like you'd expect. He was closing in on Charles Leclerc in the end and missed out on that. I think another lap he would have probably had Charles. He was struggling on them tyres in the end. But yeah, everybody was expecting that Red Bull, considering how much faster they were from the rest of the field, to absolutely, especially in the hands of Max Verstappen, to be flying. It just didn't quite happen, and the undercut was, and the pass on Norris was, well, he'd be much happier with his strategy team after what happened out last time out when he was just crying on the radio, we've been undercut by everybody. They got the strategy right, but they just didn't have the pace in the car. Max was saying as such that, you know, it won't be as easy what we've seen, but I think everyone was so taken aback by the gap he had to everybody in qualifying that you just took what he thought was saying was just pinch of salt, and the reality was that he'd be flying it. It wasn't to be. And Red Bull really got an awful lot of work to do. They've now are probably the second best car after McLaren, and it's going to be an interesting end to the season to see how they come back after this summer break. But for Max Verstappen, a 6 out of 10. I was a little bit disappointed, and most of that was because of a really brilliant qualifying lap from him. Was outstanding to do that, what he did in the rain. 6th place finisher Lando Norris moves up to 5th in the end. He had another horrible race start, went wide at turn 1, was 4th, dropped down to 7th, and that just really made his weekend hard. Then went strangely with the strategy long despite realising it's quite difficult to overtake early on. I'm surprised they went for the long first stint strategy when Max pitted first. I think it's because they knew that they'd been undercut and hopefully the extra tyre advantage would help them later on. It didn't quite pan out that way, and he was stuck behind Max Verstappen throughout pretty much the whole race, wasn't he? Even when the second round came, they didn't try to switch things up to undercut Red Bull and get that place back, which I think was again more naive strategy from McLaren. They did have the faster car. Look at what Oscar Piastri was able to do in clear air, and had Lando Norris got past Max, I think he would have been flying. But another difficult weekend. Started off what should have been promising. Another poor start has really cost him some decent points, and he finishes the race losing more points to Max Verstappen in the championship. I think the driver championship, he is the man really to take the fight to Max Verstappen, and so far they're losing points in when they have the faster car. They absolutely need to capitalise, much like Red Bull did in the first 4 or 5 races, didn't they? Max was winning everything, and now McLaren have that car and they aren't really maximising things. He'll be disappointed, Lando Norris. I've gone for a 5 out of 10. 7th place finisher Carlos Sainz. He started there, finished there in the end, and well, he was up into 6th place on the hards, then tried the one stop, but then they went against that, didn't they? It worked for George Russell, but Ferrari opted to go the other way. Came out behind Sergio Perez and made a really good move on him. Nice pass, and that was probably the highlight of his day. He was too far behind Lando Norris, and had he even closed up to him, I don't think they had the pace. I think this is really where Ferrari were expected to be, and Carlos Sainz, can't say it was anything spectacular, but wasn't equally poor either. I think just Charles really outdid the car with the qualifying race pace, and I think Carlos Sainz will be disappointed, but overall I think this is where you expect Ferrari. I think a 6 out of 10 for me. 8th place finisher Sergio Perez, and he obviously had probably the most disappointing race of all. Qualified in 2nd place, and it looked like really the Perez is back, got 1 lap pace, and in the race he should do it. Everybody's talking about tyre deg being the problem here. He is the master tyre whisperer. That's what he built his career on, and yeah, he was the only man that couldn't keep a place. Everybody else said you got up to the back of someone, it was difficult to overtake. This guy lost 6 places. Standard he dropped drawn off the start to Lewis Hamilton, that can happen, but to lose 5 places from there onwards, the second stint he really just disappeared. Absolutely disintegrated. It didn't help with the Red Bull strategy of having the one hard and the one medium and everybody else having two hards. That did hamper him, but to fall away as badly as he did and then to lose out to Carlos Sainz as he did, he was just under pressure looking backwards again. And when his race seat was under threat, you know, you thought, come on, Perez, show us what you've got a little bit. It just, yeah, went horribly. Helmut Marko said he just collapsed, and well, frankly, like I say in my video on Perez keeping his seat, I think he's a really lucky boy. A 2 out of 10 for me. It was so disappointing from him. 9th place finisher, Fernando Alonso. I think this is probably the best race he could have hoped for in a sense. They aren't fast enough as the top 4 cars. And he was in a bit of no man's land. A quiet race, comfortable ahead of Ocon in the end, who finished behind him. That Aston Martin really needs some upgrades, and upgrades that work. They really kind of need to get back into the fight of the A League of the Championship. They're neither in the B League or in the A League, are they, of the Formula 1 World Championship at the moment, Aston Martin. A lot of work to be done. Fernando Alonso's dropped his head a little bit, hasn't he? He was early on really buzzing about the place, but seems to have lost his mojo a little bit. Needs a break, get his mojo back and come back as the Fernando Alonso that we know, but much needed upgrades on that Aston Martin to try and close the fight on them top 4 teams. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 because I think that's probably just the best that he could have done in that car. Esteban Ocon started in 9th, and the Alpine was actually good around Belgium, wasn't it? And he should have been fighting with his teammate, but his teammate didn't do too well at all. But Ocon had a really good race. He was running comfortably in that position, and then the strategy call, a mistake from the team. He was really angry at them, wasn't he, over radio, that they nearly cost him. But good battling back. He was on a charge at the end on the mediums. Crucial passes to pick up past Ricciardo, got back into the points and passes on Stroll, and rounds off what finishes in 9th now, 2 points for him, so he can be happy with his weekend. I've got to say his helmet was fantastic though, wasn't it, for this race? I think that was probably the highlight of the weekend for me, for Alpine anyway. But comes home with 2 points, which is probably much better than I expected. But they did well round Belgium in a crap car last time round, didn't they? So, yeah, well done to Ocon for a really decent, solid race result. I'm going for an 8 out of 10 for me. Daniel Ricciardo started in 13th place, finished 11th, but picks up a point. Crucially, he'll be really happy with that. He was disappointed, wasn't he, after the race to just miss out on points. Promoted after Russell's DSQ, but he had actually a really decent race, was running comfortably in the top 10, started on the softs, which was a really strange strategy. I think that's purely down to the tyre setup that he had. Pitted early, got the undercut on Alex Albon, he was fighting for most of that race, and then lost out to the fast charging Ocon in the end, who that Alpine was fast, but he'll be happy to pick up a point, and I think that was probably the best he could have hoped for in that car. I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo because I think that was a really decent, solid performance from him. 12th place man, Lance Stroll. He qualified 15th, made up a couple of places, but ultimately he was passed by Ocon and Daniel Ricciardo in the end. Just wasn't quick for much this weekend and was just really asking the team. They solidly need some upgrades to try and fight and get closer to that top 4 teams. But overall, I've got to say, disappointing from Lance Stroll. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. 13th place finisher, Alex Albon, and it looked like there was points potentially on the card for him. He was up into 10th place at one point, and was he another one where he could have said we should go for the one stop, but the Williams is notoriously hard on its tyres. It was in a good battle with Daniel Ricciardo for most of the race, and then unluckily just dropped out in the end. Car just in that second stint didn't have quite what it had early on. They'll be disappointed because it was potentially a point on, but just not quite enough. Upgrades, another car that badly needs upgrades. They'll be excited by the arrival of Carlos Sainz joining that team, won't it? It'll be great to see him battling with him next team and how they work together on that car. But yeah, for this race, a little bit disappointing on the overall. I thought Williams would do good here this weekend. They were fighting for back in the top 10, so probably better than where they have been more recently, where it's been 14th, 15th. But yeah, misses out on points. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. 14th place man, Pierre Gasly, and he's got to be really disappointed with his weekend. Started in 12th place, but this guy was flying all through qualifying, and when it came to Q2, it just went wrong for him. Looked like he was on to beat his teammate and should have done in the race. He was saying he had car issues and was losing so much time down the straight, and probably was just the best he could have hoped for, and that started off really early on for him. But yeah, I was disappointed with let himself down probably in qualifying to do better, and then the car let him down again. Car troubles for Alpine. That's sort of the second race in a row. He didn't start one of them, did he? So much work to do there, and this guy signed up to that team, which all seems to be falling apart there. A horrible weekend, but a much needed break and some energy needed to come back and try and put things right in that Alpine. But I'm going to go for a 4 out of 10. 15th place finisher Kevin Magnuson, and started in 17th. Actually made up 2 places, which actually is a surprise. They were a sitting duck down that straight, weren't they? Everybody was passing them willy-nilly. It was just free reign down there, wasn't it? They were really struggling for some straight line speed. Haas, disappointing overall, because they've been more looking like getting into that, cracking that top 10 in races, but their car just didn't suit Spa at all. In the wet they were slow, in the dry they were slow. Just a weekend to move on from, I think, for them. A 5 out of 10 for Kevin Magnuson, I guess more only because he made up 2 places from where he started, in which was a shocking car this weekend. Valtteri Bottas finished in 16th place, and he actually had a really good race up until lap 33. He was up into P10, and him, like Russell, could he have really tried the one stop there and try and hold things back? I don't think that car is as soft on his tyres as the Mercedes, and I think that's why ultimately he decided to pit. Stuck on the mediums in the end, came out 16th and finished there. It was a race where you think, should they have really just tried it? Who cares? You know, you've not picked up any points all season, and this was a chance where Valtteri was good in the race. Started in 14th, one of the better qualifying sessions, and to come home with nothing again, nothing but disappointment. Another team which looks in disarray, don't they? Big changes going on in the background. A 6 out of 10 for me, because I think his qualifying performance was good and better than that car. I think he outdid that car this weekend. It is a bit of a stinker, isn't it, that one? Yuki Tsunoda finished in 17th place, started last, and he actually looked like he was on for a decent race at one point. Went long on his first stint, stopped on lap 19. Came out, 6 seconds behind Bottas, but then was comfortably ahead of Logan Sargeant. You've got to watch his interview at the end. It's absolutely brilliant. After the end of that race, he said his car started in Zandvoort, and to finish where he did. It was always going to be a hard battle from starting last. He took all them penalties, didn't need the power unit in a track which proved difficult to overtake in the end. Overall disappointing for Yuki. A 5 out of 10 for me. 18th place man Logan Sargeant, who won't be on the grid next season unless he can pick up the race seat. It looks unlikely, doesn't it? Another race which he just wasn't that good at all, was it? Used as a blocker to try and help Alex Albon. That didn't work out too well for him and was just off the pace. Another weekend to forget. A 4 out of 10 for me. Overall disappointing. Will he now raise his game now the pressure is off of him not having a race seat, and he comes back in the summer break to really try and go for it? Or will we see him lose his seat and Mercedes do some sort of a deal with Williams to see how Kimi Antonelli gets on in that seat until the end of the season, and then promote him to a Mercedes seat? Who knows, because he's not really quite doing the job for Logan. But ultimately I do think now he might just see that seat out. Carlos Sainz is taking that up. Bit of a shame, the only American on the grid loses his seat, and I can't really see a way back for him now. 19th place finish for Nico Hulkenberg. This is probably one of his worst races of the season, wasn't it? It's going so well up until this point. Started in 16th place and went backwards. Another poor start, and then another one down the long straights was slow. a weekend to forget for Haas and for Nico Hulkenberg. I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. And then Zhou Guanyu, that did not finish, lasted 7 laps, was slow with lap 3, had a hydraulics issue, was way down. No rating for Zhou. I think he got lucky on this one, but yeah. He's still not got the same car as Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, so where I've been giving him a bit of slack, probably should have cut him a bit there, to be honest, in previous races. Not got the upgrades of Valtteri Bottas yet. Sauber really need to get themselves in gear. And there we have it, the driver ratings. And let's get to the prediction reviews. I thought Max Verstappen would take pole. He wasn't the official pole man, but you can't take it off him. 0.6 seconds ahead of everybody. It was such a class lap. It's such a real shame that we didn't get to see the full on board view with Sky Sports. Surprisingly, they showed Charles Leclerc's lap, which was what, 6/10 down. I mean, we wanted to see the fastest man around that, and it was Max Verstappen. A really special lap from him. Lando Norris, I thought, would line up second. It wasn't to be for him, a poor qualifying session. Charles Leclerc, I thought, would be third. Well, at least I thought he'd be in the top 3. He took a pole in the end, second officially in my records, but yeah, another really good lap from Charles Leclerc to take that, because I don't think that car had it in it anywhere at any point in the qualifying session. It didn't look like he'll be up there, so I'm going to take some credit for both of them. It was so bad last time out. I've got to do what I can, haven't I? For the race, I thought Lando Norris would win it, Max Verstappen second, and well, I had Lewis Hamilton on the podium. He won it in the end, was second officially, but Merc won 2. Who'd have seen that coming? And actually, to see Norris and Verstappen so far back, it looked all for all the world that we see them two fighting all the way through to the front. It wasn't to be, was it? Them two fighting for 5th and 6th place for most of the races, and Mercedes stole a march, and everyone, and even Charles Leclerc picking up a podium. I think that was a really good result from him in the end. I thought it'd be a good weekend for Williams. Albon was better in the fight for top 10, but I can't take anything from that. He dropped down and finished 13th place in the end, so yeah, no credit there. And I thought it'd be a bad weekend for the Racing Bulls. It was for Yuki Tsunoda, but when you take all lap penalties, it's always making your life hard. I can't take any credit for getting this one right. It was absolutely wrong. A point for Daniel Ricciardo in the end. Fantastic result from them. I thought they'd struggle, but yeah, a couple of decent results in my predictions review. Yeah, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment as always. Enjoy the 3-week break. I'll be popping up with some videos in between. And yeah, heading off to Zandvoort next when we return towards the end of August. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment as always. See you next time.